Welcome everyone to my review of the IDW Sonic 2024 Annual. Yes, it's that time once again. And before I continue, I'm going to put a massive spoiler warning here because two stories in this collection are set after the events of issue 75, which at the time of writing hasn't come out yet. So if you want to hold off on watching this video until after reading that issue, be my guest. Though there is a pretty high chance that this video will come out after I release the issue 75 video. Regardless, if you don't care about spoilers or have read issue 75, let's continue. If you're unfamiliar with the annuals in general, they are giant one-shots featuring stories focusing on world building. They're also known for highlighting new talent to the Sonic comics. So far, there's the 2019 annual, which is just world building, though it is notable for introducing the recurring character Jewel the Beetle, the 2020 annual which featured stories centered around the Metal Virus. Now 2021 did not have an annual per se. It was a one-shot celebrating Sonic's 30th anniversary, with stories set in the classic era. 2022's annual had unlikely characters interacting with each other. And finally, while we did not get a 2023 annual per se, the 900th adventure is one in spirit, as it featured different segments of Sonic's singular mission done by different artists and writers. This year, we're going back to the traditional format with some differences this time. First, as far as I'm aware, everyone that has worked on this special worked on IDW Sonic previously. For example, Yasmin here was the writer for Winter Jam, and Gigi wrote stories previously alongside Evan Stanley. But this will be their first story that they will be going solo. Second, unless you count the vanilla version of Sonic's 30th anniversary special, this annual has the fewest stories of them all so far, clocking in at 3. And finally, the big story, or rather the longest story of the annual, is the last one this time, and it's written by someone other than Ian Flynn or Evan Stanley, the aforementioned Gigi in this case. So without further ado, let's get started. I can go ahead and say that this story right here is the reason for the mega spoilers, and it's because it's set after the main comics at the time of writing, current saga, Clean Sweep Inc. Though again, there's a chance that this video will come out after issue 75. The Clean Sweep Inc. saga saw the return of Starline's Sonic and Tails knockoffs, Surge the Tenric, and Kit the Fennec, as they were recruited by the saga's main villain, business criminal Clutch the Possum, to sabotage the heroic restoration from within. Things changed during the saga's final arc, Phantom Riders, where Surge got a taste of what it's like to be a hero, and after encountering a fan, decided to try being a hero for real. Kit supported this idea because he has to support Surge. That's his purpose. Things hit a snag when Clutch revealed that he's controlling the hero narrative, and Surge broke down because of it. Kit came up with a plan to salvage the situation, which first involved exposing the corrupt nature of Clean Sweep Inc. And that's before the big reveal of Clean Sweep's shady operations to the general public. Here's where issue 75 spoilers really come into play, because during the climax, the two would outright attack Clutch, which was their way of saying they quit. While they failed to deal with Clutch due to other parties interfering, they were free to do what they want. In this case, make an attempt to be actual heroes. This story starts with them making such an attempt as they try to stop a runaway trolley in Westopolis. Wait, Westopolis? The first level in Shadow the Hedgehog? Are you sure about that comic? Cause aesthetically, this place resembles Central City a la City Escape, and that place definitely has trolleys and slopes. Then again, we've only seen Westopolis during the Black Arms invasion, so it could be identical to Central City. Who knows? Anyway, Surge orders Kit to stop the trolley with his water tentacles, which doesn't quite work out. To complicate things further, there's a Chow marching band crossing at the crosswalk up ahead, so Surge forces the trolley to stop by knocking it over, and thanks to Kit still holding on to it, he was able to soften the landing. The people on board are a bit roughed up, but they're alive. Surge wants praise from them, but aside from one person, they don't get it. In fact, one person complains about getting injured from the rescue. As the one person who thinks Scourge leads the complainer away, The former comments on how fast she was, while the latter states that she's not Sonic. Yeah, not something you want to say in front of the knockoff. Surprisingly, Surge shows a bit of restraint here. Later in the imposter's current hideout, Surge bounces around a ball around the room, and Kit asks what's wrong. It's nothing health related, nor it's being mad at Kit. She's been thinking hard about something. Specifically, that Starline was right about the whole Sonic cycle. You know, Eggman causing trouble, Sonic stopping him, everyone cheering, rinse and repeat. She adds that Sonic and the general populace keep letting it happen. She cites what happened in issue 75, that Sonic did all the work and no one else was able to save themselves. I've got words on this in a moment, and yet, she can't help but feel sorry for the people. She can't get mad at a world too inept to take care of itself. That being said, Sonic and Tails are still on their hit list, but they'll also ruin Eggman's schemes whenever possible, and get the hero worship they deserve. Kit brings up the possibility that they might finish off Eggman someday, and Surge is not worried about that. Kit, however, is. He reasons that with no more Eggman, there would be no more people for Surge to save and give her praise. Plus, he suspects that Surge wants to help people for real. So he comes up with a devious plan to keep Surge happy and himself useful to her. Create peril for Surge to overcome, with the, quote, idiot masses suffering as a result. Surge sees Kit smiling and believes he's on board with her idea, unaware of Kit's darker plans. And so this story ends with the two declaring to the world that they're taking over as the new heroes, whether it likes it or not. Heroes Calling establishes what Surge and Kit's status will be for the time being. They think they're going to be heroes, but in reality, they are the wild cards. And if I were to place them on the hero-villain spectrum, they'd be around anti-villain, as both want to harm the main heroes and the main villain. Though as we see here, there's a good chance the two may go down different paths. In Surge's case, she could shift more towards being an anti-hero. She lacks the traits of a typical hero, obviously, and her attempts at being a hero caused more damage than necessary, and yet we want her to succeed. The events of the clean sweepstakes definitely affected her, and she definitely wants the praise of being a hero. But as Kit points out, deep down, Surge really wants to help people beyond the praise. That said, she's going about it a bit wrong. You don't get praise by saving people in a way that causes injury. And if she doesn't change her approach a bit, she'll never get it. Besides, being a hero is not about the cheers and praise. It's about doing the right thing. Sonic and his friends understand this. Yeah, people celebrating their heroics is a side effect of the job, but very rarely do the heroes capitalize on the celebration. More often than not, they move on to the next world-saving task. We don't know if Surge will ever understand this. She even holds no hostility towards the average citizen, even pitying them for relying on heroes like Sonic to save them. Let's address this, starting with the comment she made about Sonic's actions at Restoration HQ. For context, the Restoration shuttle was set to blow up to prevent Clutch from stealing it. There was no way to deactivate the self-destruct, and as a response, Clutch destroyed the flight controls. The Clean Sweepstakes caravan, under the guidance of Jewel and the Babylon Rogues, were able to drag the shuttle towards a desolated area to minimize damage. However, said area contained Restoration HQ, and there were still people inside. Surge and Kit bailed before the shuttle was dragged towards the place. Had they stuck around, they would have had a more accurate picture of what happened. Sonic did carry a bunch of people out of Restoration HQ. However, his friends were also there to help, and even got his rider's rival Jet the Hawk in on this, under the pretense of a competition. There was literally a ticking clock as a massive time bomb was about to arrive. The people inside HQ weren't aware of this, and they were spread out all over the place. Speed was essential to save everyone. Now, since Sonic was involved, he would be the guy mentioned when news of what happened spread. Surge's comment about people unable to help themselves is half accurate. There are ordinary people who just want to live normal lives. There's nothing wrong with that. And there are those who are able to rise up to do more for the world any way they can. Often, the latter individuals would be inspired by the actions of Sonic and his friends. Surge and Kit, at least their original unaltered selves, would have experienced the Sonic Forces War in some way. And if their memories weren't wiped, they might have remembered resistance groups forming to fight back. Put a pin on this for later. What I'm saying is, depending on the situation, people can rise to the occasion, but it wouldn't hurt to have assistance from powerful heroes. And Surge, in her own twisted way, wants to be a powerful hero herself. Kit, on the other hand, has no such desires, other than to serve Surge, of course. In fact, he plans to secretly cause mayhem on the people so that Surge can save them, and so that he can remain useful to her. This shows his devious side being used for a more selfish reason. He's heading a little bit more towards a villainous path. Are we seeing tiny bits of their original personality seeping through? Perhaps originally Surge was a kind-hearted, helpful person, and Kit was a smart juvenile delinquent. With no more Starline to maintain them, that certainly is possible. That being said, Starline's brainwashing is still in effect, as again, both still want to take on Sonic and Tails. They're programmed to. Heck, when you really think about it, Surge and Kit are basically carrying on Starline's plan to disrupt the Sonic cycle, as they also plan to disrupt Eggman's schemes whenever possible. And it's the possibility of Eggman's permanent defeat that led to Kit secretly plotting behind Surge's back. This right here is another example of how inexperienced they are, not just with the hero thing, but by being extraordinary beings in Sonic's world in general. Because as previously shown throughout the franchise, there were threats to the world other than Eggman, and there still are/will be some in the future. Doesn't matter, as they'll never succeed in getting rid of Sonic, Tails, and Eggman, as they are the main heroes and villain of the franchise. Plus, they will always be in the shadow of the original heroes. Besides the comment from the complainer, a nice visual cue of this is the blankets in their quarters being blue and orange. Though I do have to wonder about where this place is and how they could afford it. Will Surge and Kit ever escape being compared to the originals? That depends on their actions from this point forward. For now, they'll be experiencing what it's like to be wild cards, with an opening to cause a schism in the duo if Surge ever discovers Kit's treachery. This story starts with Knuckles on Angel Island guarding the Master Emerald. What else is new? Well, we see here that Knuckles is actually kinda bored. He wonders what Sonic and the others are doing at the moment. Probably having another wild adventure together. That's when the Master Emerald starts showing him visions of his friends. This makes him reflect on his situation. He may have had his fair share of adventures, but he also has a pretty fulfilling life guarding the island and the Master Emerald. Then he wonders what would have been like if he had no Master Emerald to watch, or friends to interact with. He quickly realizes that he'd feel bad for that version of him. He comes out of his vision, and is grateful for the Master Emerald for giving his life meaning. Then he hears someone giving him a heartwarming thanks. Sonic the Hedgehog. Knuckles claims he wasn't talking to him, but Sonic rightfully points out that Knuckles was thinking of him. Knuckles does not outright deny this. Amy and Tails soon pop up, and Knuckles wants to know why they're here. Sonic pretty much wanted to gather the rest of the team and pay Knuckles a little visit, though the trip to reach Angel Island wasn't smooth based on the condition of the tornado. Knuckles wants to know what crazy adventure the trio had on the way here, and the story ends with Tails beginning to tell the story of what happened. For My Destiny shows us one of the few times Knuckles gets lost in his thoughts while guarding the Master Emerald and his island. Previous examples include Sonic Adventure, his animated prologue for Sonic Frontiers, and more recently, his 30th anniversary comic special. The last one I want to focus on a bit more, as that version of Knuckles is from the classic era, meaning he has a bit more of a cocky attitude compared to his modern self, stating that he's the greatest while sporting that grin of his. It really shows how far Knuckles has come when his later internal reflections are more about his purpose in life. The one in the 2024 annual being a prime example. While he is grateful for having his Master Emerald duties, He does wonder what his friends are doing while he's doing his job all alone. Being confined to Angel Island does mean he's missing out on a number of adventures, unless something comes to him. The Megavirus being a prime example. While he did appear in the Clean Sweep Inc. saga, it was only in a limited capacity. Even then, it was centered around the Echidna relics and how he ended up being an unwitting pawn in Clutch the Possum's machinations, and he may never know because Clutch covered his tracks, at least in this case. While he is missing out on adventures due to his duties, he still thinks about his friends. Even the Master Emerald seems to aid in Knuckles' thoughts about his friends via a little vision quest. This wouldn't be the first time the Master Emerald showed Knuckles visions, as a mostly completed version showed Knuckles where the remaining shards were located in Sonic Adventure. To me, there's always something more to the Master Emerald than just being a glorified power source, as just before it ends its vision to Knuckles, it shows an image of Sonic. Guess who shows up moments later for real? It's like the Master Emerald knew Sonic, Tails, and Amy were stopping by. Who knows what else that giant gem is capable of, besides keeping an island in the air, or drawing in smaller gems from another planet. Speaking of Sonic Frontiers, I don't know if it was Yasmin's intention, but I can see the story tying into Knuckles' subplot in that game. Knuckles said to Sonic that he wished he could be more free to have adventures like the Hedgehog, and not tied down to one place. The comic at this time is set before Sonic Frontiers, and I would not be surprised if this story planted the seeds of this revelation. One more thing before moving on. This story serves as a tease to something that's going to happen to Sonic, Tails, and Amy around issue 80. Must have been something bad considering the state of the tornado. That's comics for ya. Always mentioning things that haven't happened yet in the main book via spin-off material, and vice versa. Plus, the end here shows how much Team Sonic cares for one another when three members decide to pay a visit to their fourth. These first two stories seem relatively lighthearted, but they were just appetizers to our main course. And oh boy, it's going to be a doozy. This story begins with the Neo Diamond Cutters camping out and waiting for Sonic to show up. For context, this is set before issue 57, the start of the Urban Warfare arc. Unknown to the group, they are being watched by none other than Mimic the Octopus. You know, the backstabbing shapeshifter who helped Eggman destroy the original Diamond Cutters? Well, this story is from his perspective, and as he stalks Whisper, he begins to recount to himself his life prior to this moment. Long ago, he was an actor who took on minor roles, but thought his talents were wasted. He wanted to be in the spotlight, and when he went a little too far, his colleagues were ready to throw him out of there. But losing a chance at the spotlight would be the least of Mimic's problems, as around this time, the Sonic Forces War broke out. Thanks to his shape-shifting abilities, Mimic was able to escape the initial chaos. But the war did not help his mental state, as his ambitions burned all around him. He does notice groups forming to fight back. So Mimic joined these groups because he still wants to be noticed and belong to something. I did say groups because while he realized it was foolish to fight the Badniks alone, he knew when things would get too hot for his tastes, and thus he would leave these groups to their fates. From his observations during the war, he concluded that people in general have a little emptiness inside, and that they're trying to fill it with something to cover it up. This applies to himself, as he started seeing the need to belong as childish. He wanted to embrace the emptiness within himself. As he changes form so he can eat, someone just happens to see him do it. Whisper, a happy-go-lucky, excitable Whisper. She introduces herself and her Wisp buddy, and says that she's part of the Diamond Cutters, the best anti-Eggman mercenary team there is. But they are sorely lacking in the stealth area. After seeing what Mimic can do, she believes he can fulfill this role. Mimic changing into a copy of her seals the deal. Whisper returns to the Diamond Cutter base with Mimic still in her form. This was enough to get the group's attention, and they welcome him into the fold. And Mimic stuck around for a long while because the Diamond Cutters are often rewarded for their services, which he likes. Plus he gets private quarters and high quality attire. The first few missions with them went smoothly. However, things changed during the raid at a chilly Eggman base. Badniks were able to see through Mimic's disguise and expose him. The rest of the Diamond Cutters come to his aid. They'll distract the Badniks while Mimic goes for the main control hub. As the Diamond Cutters were having some fun, the Badniks in the base shut down thanks to Mimic destroying the control hub. However, Clairvoyance is picking up some more active Badniks approaching. As the group plan the attack, Mimic comes up with a better idea. Assume Eggman's form and ordering his Badnik army to leave. While the Badniks are confused at first, Mimic's able to pull off a convincing performance that they buy it and leave. The team praises Mimic for this action. Sometime later, the team gather at a campfire in the woods. The purpose being for Smithy here to give the team his newest inventions, metal concealers, or rather, their masks. He wants to keep a record of their activities, hide their faces from Eggman scanners, and most importantly, it symbolizes that he wants the Diamond Cutters to act as one. Odd that he doesn't bring up the mask's ability to translate the Wisp language right then and there. It probably falls under the more category he brought up earlier. This leads to each member speaking about how grateful they are to have each other, culminating with Whisper stating how much she trusts Mimic and how he makes the team complete. Mimic, who didn't say anything to the group, dismisses himself. This is what he always wanted, praise and admiration and a sense of belonging. That should have been that, right? Well, if it was pre-war Mimic, he'd be content. However, this is a Mimic affected by war, where his mind has been twisted into believing that people can't be trusted. And he believes the Diamond Cutters are saying only what he wanted to hear. Plus, if they ever find out what he did to his previous teams, they'll kick him out. So he decides to pull the same stunt as those other teams and ditch them. But since this team's more organized than the others, he's going to need some assistance in dealing with them. If you remember Whisper's tragic backstory in the Tangle and Whisper miniseries, you know what's coming next. Mimic makes a deal with Eggman, they set a trap to take care of the Diamond Cutters, and only Whisper survived because she remained outside. As such, Mimic thus sees Whisper as a stain that needs to be washed away. We cut to the present day, where Mimic is about to carry out his attack on Whisper. All he needs is a momentary distraction, and he'll be rid of her once and for all. But the moment's ruined by the arrival of Sonic and Tails. Mimic quickly takes cover and watches the group leave. We end the story with him vowing to get rid of the pain that is the memory of the Diamond Cutters, i.e. Whisper. Only then would he be considered free. He confesses to himself that he's selfish, arrogant, and lives to watch others suffer, and he's proud of that. He also breaks the fourth wall to ask us, "Who are you?" Well, Mimic, I'm a reviewer of video game comics that wants to turn you into fried calamari and serve you with a side of coleslaw and hush puppies. Shattered Diamonds gives us an interesting look into the infamous shapeshifter. Mimic always had a bit of a selfish streak in him, even in his early days as an actor. And I can see why. If one has the ability to change forms, why not try to be more than a minor actor? Thing is, you want to be seen as yourself in a way. And while actors do put on makeup and prosthetics, in some small way, you can tell it's them. Mimic here can copy forms entirely, and wanted to use them to be the center of attention. If he wanted to take acting seriously, he should appear more as himself. And if he were to take on acting roles that require him to change into someone else, perhaps to cover for that person if they're unavailable, he might need to work on said person's mannerisms. Mimic having a background in acting explains why his successes at disguises can vary. When imitating well-known characters, it's sometimes hit or miss depending on who he's trying to fool. But when taking on original or lesser-known forms, he has a higher rate of success. That, and he's also known for adapting to situations. The war really warped his already frail mental state. His outlook on people has changed. He sees all people as pretenders who try to find meaning to fulfill the emptiness inside them. Though in some way he is projecting because there are some genuinely good people out there. This ties back to what I said earlier in the Surge and Kit segment. And even if he's right, that people are trying to fill some void they have in their lives. Would it be better in the long run to fill that void doing something positive for the world, no matter if it's big or small? Mimic will never understand this. He has become a full-on psycho that uses people, then discard them when he has no more use for them. This story also recontextualizes Whisper's character and the previous material we've seen her in. The reason she gravitated towards Tangle was because her personality was just like the lemurs, albeit a little more bloodthirsty. Anytime she acted out if something happened to Tangle, or someone was trying to threaten her, it's Whisper trying to protect what is essentially a younger version of herself. There are small hints of Whisper's original personality still in there, such as her reaction to Tangle being freed of the Mel virus. Whisper was more affected by Mimic's betrayal than we realized, because she was the one who recruited him in the first place. Again, thanks to her Tangle-esque reaction to his skills. She thought Mimic could add something to the team, and for a while, it did, to the point that Whisper trusted him. But as Mimic himself would say, he's a backstabber that ditches his team when things get too hot. It's clear that the Diamond Cutters were already a close-knit group prior to Mimic's arrival. Remember the phrase, never forget, never forgive from the Tangle and Whisper miniseries? With the addition of this story, not only does it refer to what Mimic did, but to herself. She feels responsible for bringing Mimic on board. If she hadn't, Slinger, Claire, and Smithy might still be alive. No wonder she became closed off after the tragedy and became a lone wolf. If you don't count her Wisp companions. Just like with Mimic trying to get rid of Whisper, so he can finally move on, Whisper's hunting down Mimic to atone and avenge her friends. No wonder Whisper went nuts hunting down Mimic in issue 75. She was played the fool by the same backstabbing teammate yet again. There are some callbacks / call forwards to previous issues. Smithy presenting the mask with the intention of the Diamond Cutters to work as one. That's the same thing Whisper said to Tangle while explaining her variable Wispin. Since that device was also built by Smithy, his intention, had he and his other two teammates not bought it, was for each member to have one so they could share their wisps, in order to continue the act as one philosophy. This bit with Claire and Slinger discussing continuing the Diamond Cutters as a possible faction of the Resistance? I think that's what they're saying. The wording seems a little off. Sadly, this group wouldn't get the chance. But their successors, the Neo Diamond Cutters, would be formed under the Resistance successor, the Restoration. Though who knows how long it would last, especially given the events of issue 75. Though I do like this nice touch of both versions of the team hanging out at a campsite discussing their plans, with the common element of having the same two opposing members present in the same area. Mimic said at the end of the Bad Guys miniseries he would pay Whisper a visit. Well, it turns out there was an earlier, secret visit prior to the Clean Sweep Inc. saga. Of course, this attempt would fail. Whisper needs to be alive so Mimic can torment her and everyone else as duo. Then of course, as previously mentioned, the story's framing device takes place before urban warfare. There appears to be some continuity flubs such as Tails being present at this rendezvous. He wasn't present during the recon, and only appears later on as part of the cavalry. That could be explained away by Tails splitting off from the group just before reaching Eggperial City. Then there's Mimic coming across the Neo Diamond Cutters in the woods in the first place. You might think this is an error considering he learned about the team from Clutch at the start of the Clean Sweep Inc. saga, which is set after urban warfare. His anger at the moment is given new meaning thanks to the events of this story. Anyway, I've checked, and the team doesn't say their name here. Not only does this line up with Mimic learning about them later on, the team had not yet had their emotional chat about said name in urban warfare. So as far as I'm aware, things are fine there. In the end, Shattered Diamonds adds to the history of a minor villain, the original Diamond Cutters, and why said minor villain hates that group more than the others he's used. I think it's a combination of the Diamond Cutters being more organized, and treating him in a way that he would have appreciated had the war not happened. And it's clear he did not want to be friends with them. Unfortunately, as of issue 75, Mimic is still on the loose. Hopefully one day, he'll get his just desserts. To wrap things up, The 2024 annual does follow an overall theme, a sense of belonging and identity. One story had characters whose original identities were erased, trying to establish new ones, so one of them can get the people's praise, and the other one plans to secretly cause mayhem so he won't become obsolete. Another story has a character knowing who he is and is grateful, while at the same time curious about his friends, and perhaps secretly wants to join them at times. And finally, there's a story of a character who knows who he is, that being someone who wants to watch the world burn and does not want to belong to any group. I doubt that's what our three writers were going for, but it is something to think about. And with that, thank you all for watching, and have a good day. Interesting that Rouge is among the friends shown in Knuckles' vision, despite her desire to claim the Master Emerald for herself. It goes to show that deep down, Knuckles does have some respect for the treasure hunter.